So the mission of the Forward Party is that every American should have the ability to decide what's best for them. And that is the essence of the crypto community, is the essence of what has made America the center of innovation. It's also why we are all here today, to be forward, to look forward, and to be firmly founded on the faith that nothing is beyond reach. So it's my honor to introduce to you Andrew Yang, co-chairman of the Forward Party, and Mackenzie Segalis of CNBC.
Hey guys, I'm Mac and I'm here with Andrew. A lot to dig into in the next half hour. We're going to be talking about the intersection of politics with tech, everything from AI to crypto. But I think that maybe we start by talking about the 2024 White House run. We just had a presidential hopeful on stage. You know, Andrew, I know that you are actually a bit bullish on Dean Phillips.
Yes. Hey, everyone. It's great to be back.
So, okay, to set this up for people who don't know, Congressman Minnesota.
Yeah. Most people haven't heard of this guy, but how many of you are excited about Joe Biden's being the Democratic nominee without any debates, without a primary? It's not great. He's 80, gonna be 82 in 2024. And he has a 54-year-old challenger named Dean Phillips, who ran a company called Talenti Gelato. You guys remember, like, Talenti Gelato sold to Unilever? 54-year-old, straight up the middle, 3-term member of Congress. I think he's going to give Joe a run for his money in the Democratic primary, so keep an eye out. New Hampshire, January 23rd. I think Dean Phillips is going to put up a big number.
Is there anything about his platform that relates to tech that excites you, or is it the fact that he's a generic Democrat and a generic Democrat wins to Trump by 8 points in the polls?
Dean is in his 50s, so he understands technology much more deeply and natively than a lot of folks in Washington. And he's someone who just wants to make the economy work broadly and more effectively for people. He's pro-innovation, pro-growth.
Have you decided who you're voting for? You've balked at that question before, but have you given your support officially to anyone?
I'm excited to get behind a presidential candidate in this race. I will say to you all, this is probably not a shocker, I'm a not Trump guy. So if there's someone who I think is going to upgrade us and lead us to the 21st century, I'm excited to get behind that person.
Okay, so this morning, Vivek introduced a crypto policy that's a part of his platform, kind of like a no regulation policy where digital assets would have this safe harbor window before the SEC or CFTC regulates them. To people in the sector, this probably sounds great. How realistic is that? Or is it more just about kind of having a bullish crypto part of your platform to cater to a certain voting contingent?
I'm someone who thinks that there's going to be some regulatory approach, and the goal should be to make it so that it's actually sophisticated, rational, not an overreach, not something that pushes innovation away from the U.S. Now, that's going to involve some compromise. There are going to be some elements of it that are probably going to make some people in the industry, flinch. But that to me would be a fine middle ground to arrive at, because the fear is that the space gets politicized in a way that leads to bad policy. And unfortunately, you see that in a lot of areas of American life. I mean, you can pretty much name an issue and think, oh, this has become subject to politics. And the goal should be to try and avoid that for blockchain and crypto.
Well, yeah, I mean, it feels like crypto is highly politicized with, like, the Republican and Democratic parties obviously swaying. One is very supportive, one is much less so. How do you close that partisan divide? And, the second question out of that, how worried are you about the flight of companies out of the U.S. in the absence of any sort of hard and fast rules from Capitol Hill?
Yeah, the way to avoid this fate is to have positive use cases for blockchain in solving problems for the American people. So while I'm here today, I mean, what's the main use case that people can think of? Unfortunately, what they see is in the news is just Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. I mean, that's what they're seeing in the news, and it's around speculation. Now, we all know that there are other uses, like, for example, something I'm super passionate about. Why is it that we can't vote on our mobile phones? We run our lives on our mobile phones. Like, we should be able to do that, and you can do that on the blockchain in a way that's tamper-proof. That should be a vision that Americans can get behind. And if we can actually say, look, guys, this isn't just a financial speculation vehicle or a storehouse of value. This actually can solve real problems that you care about. That's the way to translate it to a broader group of Americans.
And so let's get into that. The Forward Party has sort of become a voting reform organization within a political party. Before we kind of get into that intersection of tech with the work that you want to do on voting reform, let's talk about open primaries. Can you walk me through some of what you're pushing for there?
Oh, yeah, it's good fun. I sit before you today, the co-chair of the third biggest political party in the country by resources. Now, there's a very steep drop-off between 2 and 3. It's a bit of a cliff. But we are number 3, and we're growing. And this is a little bit of fun. What do you all think the approval rating is for U.S. Congress as we're here together right now? Go ahead and shout out a number. Someone said 10. That's about right. Pre-debacle is like 15%, 18%. What is the re-election rate for incumbent members of Congress?
I heard 80. It's higher than that.
It's 94%. It's a better win rate than the Jordan-era Chicago Bulls or the Durant-era Golden State Warriors. So how many of you all run a business? Let's try that. Imagine if 4 out of 5 or more of your customers were unhappy and you did nothing, change nothing. That's the way the American political system feels to most Americans because we're carved up into blue zones and red zones, and there's no real competition. So the way to change this is to make it so that everyone's vote matters, and the way to do that is to get rid of the party primaries, make it so all of us can vote for anyone. Now, that sounds like a fantasy, but 2 states have already voted to get rid of their primaries, Maine and Nevada, and then 3 other states are voting on it in 24. So if you can imagine 6, 8, 10 U.S. senators who can do whatever they want without having to go through the ringer of like a party primary where the folks are frankly not very prone to good policy, honestly, like they become very self-interested. That's our path out of this mess and into the 21st century. And that's what the Forward Party is driving. And we're seeing great victories. We just got 5 elected officials elected this past election day.
And Andrew, you put out some interesting numbers. So when Alaska pushed for this, it was a $6 million kind of like ad campaign around it before it was passed. The number was higher in Nevada, but you did some math, and in the states where you would, potentially put this on the ballot, have people vote on it, it's a $200 million investment, assuming that, if you did it in 10 states, half of those states potentially approve it. You free up 10 senators to not be worried about partisan politics, and that changes the calculus entirely for politics. So, and I love how you kind of contrasted that with the $8 billion that'll be spent next year.
Yeah, we're going to spend $8, $9, $10 billion beating each other up in this next election cycle that you're all super excited about, looking forward to. And it would cost $100 to $200 million to get rid of the party primaries in 5, 6 states, and then make it so you had 12 U.S. senators who all of a sudden were doing the right thing on behalf of the public, as opposed to whatever the party bosses were telling them. So here was the winning advertisement in Nevada that got this over the finish line. There's a military veteran looking to camera saying, "I went overseas to defend our country. I came back and I can't vote in our primaries, and I don't think that's right because independents couldn't vote in the primaries in Nevada." So how many of you all consider yourselves independents? Let's try that. Oh, wow, I think it'd be more of you. What's up with that? You should check out being an independent. It's great. So about 50% of Americans now self-classify as independents, and independents can't vote in primaries in a lot of states the way it's set up right now. So if you change that, then you change the incentive structure for our political class. Right now, they're doing what the incentives demand, and the incentives are not leading them to good things on blockchain, but on a lot of other issues. AI, which I'm very passionate about. Like our policy on AI is right now fairly limited, maybe even incoherent.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back to AI. So, okay, where does mobile voting fit in to the voting reform that you're already doing as part of your work with the Forward Party?
Yeah, I want you to have this vision. Check it out. Imagine this. Imagine it's 2028 and you all can vote on your mobile phone in a primary to decide who the next president's going to be. Imagine like the 5 people you would most want to be president. Actually, go ahead and shout it out. I'm curious. So the examples I usually use are things like Mark Cuban, The Rock, Oprah, Matthew McConaughey maybe. I'm in Texas. Like, imagine if you could vote for any of these figures on your mobile phone in a primary. There is nothing stopping this from happening. A political party can design its nomination process however it wants. It can accept a vote on your smartphone, perhaps verified by a personalized QR code that gets sent to your mailing address, very hard to defraud. And then the legacy parties would be left saying, no, that's not real. What is real is waiting to hear what 6% of Iowans think. And then you'd be like, wait a minute, I don't care what Iowans think most of the time. Why do I care about it in this context? So you can actually shame the legacy parties into admitting how ridiculous their process is and make it so that all of us actually can determine our own leaders. That's the promise of democracy, and it's right there for the taking. You have these 2 creaking, decrepit parties that are trying to curb the franchise. If you go to someone and say, hey, why don't we vote on our smartphones? They'll say, oh, it's not secure. And then if you show them very, very convincing, thorough evidence being like, it's actually totally secure, military veterans are using it right now, what you'll find out is they actually don't care about the security. What they want to do is limit the number of people who vote so that they can predict and game the outcome. They do not want the American people to have control of our own futures, and that's what we can change via mobile voting.
I mean, does that actually happen, though? Like, using blockchains to vote is a tough sell. And like you said, there's been a lot of pushback, people using the security argument. It's the last thing I'll ask, but when do you think this would actually gain traction?
I think a lot of you guys know. So you can do it on the blockchain. You could do it not on the blockchain. But the tech is mature. I mean, we run our lives with these tools. We can 100% vote in a way that's secure and tamper-proof and verifiable and everything else. We can do that right now. We can definitely do it in 2028.
Okay, so for years, you've been a major advocate of universal basic income. You and I sat down in Miami in 2021. We talked about where, stablecoins or CBDCs could fit into this programmable money. The temperature in the room since then has changed with respect to crypto in the United States. Have your views changed on where a cryptocurrency might be a useful tool in terms of implementing UBI?
I'm an enormous believer in smart money, smart currencies. We need it. Because if you project forward, AI is going to get stronger and stronger. A lot of jobs that we would have thought of as very, very secure, like basic coding a few years ago, we now see are going to be very automatable. And so what lies ahead for us? What lies ahead in the best case is that we have a foundational layer of economic security, and then we have multiple avenues for people to pursue that they can be rewarded if they're an artist or a creative, if they're an educator or nurturer, if they're doing something that makes other people stronger and healthier. These are things that our current monetary market does not capture or cover. I'm going to throw out an idea that Mark Cuban had during COVID, which I liked a lot. How about a currency that you can spend at your local businesses and it disappears if you don't use it or lose it? Because we're also facing something of an Amazonification of the economy. And so if you were to go and spend money in your community, maybe that's something that we'd care about. All of these things are going to be increasingly vital because the economy's vitality is getting absorbed out of a lot of towns, a lot of communities. And the question is, how do you actually bring it back in a way that serves both the people's purposes and hopefully the country's?
Yeah, I think that idea of this, I think you dubbed the phrase human-centric capitalism, and basically like having a gauge of the economy be pegged to how people are doing, because right now that's not always how it works. Would that be the same thing as UBI to you, this kind of cryptocurrency that would coincide with the well-being of humans, this UBI framework that you've been talking about for years as well? Are those two different things, or are they the same utopian world?
And that's one reason I'm happy to be here is that, I'm not someone who's pegged to one approach to try and solve the problem. I think poverty is terrible. I think poverty should not exist to this degree in the richest society in the history of the world. Our economy is $25 trillion fiat. So if you were to do some other measurements, you could come up with another number. But we're plenty wealthy enough to be able to do more for various people. So that could be through something like an enhanced child tax credit in US dollars. It could be through something like I'm discussing right now, which is like a currency that rewards caregivers or educators or nurturers or tutors or volunteers. I think we should be taking shots at all of it because the American way of life is slipping away for more and more people, and that's going to get more prevalent, not less prevalent, as AI becomes more and more powerful and a bigger part of our lives.
I mean, it feels like a lot of the VC dollars have migrated from Web3 to generative AI tech. And so in terms of that, and I do want to move on to AI for the last 10 minutes that we have, but one last thing I'll ask you is that you said that you believe Web3 is the greatest tool to combat poverty. And then you've got figures like Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk who say that, that phrase Web3 is a lot of hand waving. So are you still as big a believer as you were in 2021 when we last talked about this?
I think that we have not scratched the surface of what these tools can do to combat poverty. The single biggest anti-poverty policy we've seen in real life in this country was the halving of child poverty in 2021 through the enhanced child tax credit. I don't know how many of you kept up with this, but the U.S. government gave families that were making less than a certain amount, about $75K, $400 or $500 a month for each of their kids. So if you had two kids and you weren't making that much money, you maybe got $600-800 a month for that year, and that halved child poverty in the United States of America. It went from around 11% to 5%. Now, because we live in America, we stopped doing it, and then the 5% went back to 12% in 2022. We took 3 million kids out of poverty and then said, hey, guess what? You're back there. And imagine being one of those families. By the way, we all pay a price for that. It's not like when that child grows up poor, they'll end up hitting our institutions at the worst, our prisons or our emergency rooms in a way that costs us all. So we're being foolish if we think disinvesting in communities is that's going to be a win. That's a disaster. Fighting poverty will pay for itself. And we did it incredibly successfully in 2021, and then we pulled the rug out from under these families in 2022 because our political system is broken, is not functional. So that's been the most effective anti-poverty thing we've seen in real life in recent years. I would love, love, love for blockchain, Web3 to be a part of solving those problems.
Okay, I want to move on to AI with the time that we have left. In April, you signed a letter with hundreds of technologists, including Elon Musk, advocating for a 6-month pause in AI tech development just to have meaningful conversations around its impact. That was never going to happen, but I think the point was more to force a conversation about the rate at which this tech is evolving, the tools that are now accessible to the public. Any thoughts, a couple months on from co-signing that letter?
Yeah, my read on it was similar to yours, Mac, where I didn't think there was actually going to be some kind of curtailment of development. But I thought it would stimulate a conversation that we are going pell-mell with some of these tools, and it is going to have adverse effects possibly, or not even possibly, almost certainly, as soon as this next election. Because if you can imagine your social media feed next October when you're seeing deepfake videos and audios and images up the wazoo about whatever candidates are in the race, because, it's relatively inexpensive and consequence-free to produce those things. So I wanted to raise my hand and say, look, guys, we may be getting ahead of ourselves with the development of these generative models, and I'd love, love, love for us to have a much more earnest and coherent approach.
Yeah, I mean, you saw a deep fake of the Pentagon on fire and the markets moved on that. And kind of going to your point, how significant and how worried are you about the potential for these tools to disrupt, the political, the voting landscape, the way that our election cycle goes this time around?
I think a lot of us are just going to be turning our social media feeds off for the last 4 weeks of this coming election cycle because there's just going to be so much madness.
A lot of people won't.
A lot of people won't. It's going to be really negative. And the question is, how does it get better? You have these social media platforms that have become essentially quasi-public entities in terms of that's how we all get our information. And that combined with AI and bad actors, including some international actors, is going to have a corrosive effect on the environment.
Beyond
the political environment.
Beyond the social media platform serving as arbiters of content, what's the government's role in this? Are they bracing? Are the parties bracing? Who's prepping for this?
Oh, they're not doing anything, honestly. I mean, it's like, I mean, you guys probably know. I mean, one of the things I raise when I talk about AI is like, hey, what was the federal approach to social media? Then people think about it and be like, there wasn't one. Don't worry about it. It's a trick question. There's this Section 230, which they drew up before Facebook even came online. So you're going to have one like the typical American regulatory approach, which is, hey, let's wait till the fiasco happens, and then we'll have hearings about it afterwards. So in my opinion, the fiasco is going to be the 2024 election cycle, and then we'll see who's in charge, and then what the aftermath looks like.
Earlier today, I was talking to Nick Carter about the importance of weighing AI safety concerns against the pushback that AI safety regulation will just reward the largest AI firms, make the market uncompetitive. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So the shorthand for this is we're in an increasingly winner-take-all economy. I'm going to use an example that's fun. Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift comes and just soaks up all of the, the energy that direction, stimulates economy wherever she goes. But that doesn't mean it's a good time for musicians. I mean, the average musician is probably having a harder time than ever. So the same is going to be true in these AI competition. It's like, what fuels the AI? Data. Who has the most data? Large-scale tech companies. If you're a startup, the best outcome for you is probably that you do something innovative and then you get gobbled up because some mega tech company will be like, oh, you know what, well, we're going to bolt you on, and that's a better outcome for you. So the winner-take-all economy is going to progress accordingly. You're going to see and you're seeing the hype cycle chase some of the biggest tech companies because we think that they're going to be some of the bigger winners. It is an open question whether they're going to be able to monetize AI in a way that makes those valuations add up.
So I want to move on to AI and the workforce. In 2020, everybody thought that it was blue-collar jobs that would be most at risk. Fast forward a few years, it looks like it's pretty much the exact opposite. Any thoughts on how that dynamic has changed and how it's playing out today?
Yeah, so this will be fun, guys. What percentage of Americans graduate from college? It's about 35%, so you have a sense. So the economy is 65%. High school grads, and the 5 biggest job sectors in the economy are administrative and clerical, retail and sales, food service and food prep, truck driving, and manufacturing. Those are about half all American jobs. So AI is still going to have effect on a bunch of those jobs. There are 2 million Americans who work at call centers still. When do you think AI is going to be able to do that job? You're like, what day is it? It's like Wednesday, tomorrow. So now a lot of those jobs aren't technically blue collar. They're called repetitive cognitive jobs. But if you look at the current labor force statistics, repetitive cognitive jobs are already shrinking in number. And so you're going to see that accelerate as AI gets stronger. The blue collar jobs, I mean, we're investing in manufacturing, but they're still going to be under pressure too.
And you think, you said in an interview that those 2 million call center jobs are really under threat once ChatGPT-5 is out. Any other imminent, how worried are you about that platform specifically disrupting the workforce when that next version comes out?
I mean, it's a very, very powerful model. I think that call center workers' days are numbered. I think that's an obvious one, but there are a bunch of inobvious ones in the guts of a lot of big banks and insurance companies and the rest of it. Again, so the big picture is that you have scarcity. The forces of scarcity are going to rise and rise as the winner-take-all economy gets stronger and stronger. And what does that mean for your political environment? As a country, do you actually come together around meaningful solutions? Or do you degenerate into hatred, animosity, xenophobia, like all the rest of it. And you can guess which path I think America's on right now. And so the question is, how do you reverse that? What's the opposite of a mindset of scarcity? It's a mindset of abundance. It's where things will be good. If you do well, that's fine with me. I'll do well too. Like where we're going to grow together. The only way out of this is for a mindset of abundance to actually take hold in a critical mass of the country. And I do think that this set of tools can help make that possible, because this is one of the most abundant-minded communities there is.
Now, UBI and AI go hand in hand. How do you pay for it? Is it taxing the AI industry directly? Like, obviously, there's already a lot of spending going towards, financial aid type programs in the U.S.
Yeah, so the enhanced child tax credit I mentioned before, price tag of around $100 billion a year to have child poverty. I'm going to suggest that was a great move. I do think that the biggest winners from AI are going to be these mega tech companies who typically don't pay a whole lot in taxes. And so you would need some more elegant mechanism to get some revenue in to help the call center workers and the rest of it. So the two suggestions I've made, number one is a value-added tax that could include AI. The second is that a proxy for AI is cloud computing, where you say, look, we're going to take a smidge off of the server farms and the rest of it, and we're going to utilize that. But bigger picture, even the money we're spending right now as a country, we're not getting great returns on. We're not getting great impact on. And if you could actually get into the guts of that, then we'd have a much better shot. Because one of the reasons why everyone's upset in America is like, oh, you want more money, you want less money. That's the wrong conversation. The question is, what are we actually solving for and what's working? A lot of rich friends of mine would be much, much more comfortable giving money to a poor person if they knew that's where it was going. What they don't want to do is they don't want to give it to this dysfunctional bureaucracy and set of pipes and then just have it disappear into the pipes themselves and then be told like, oh, we need more and more. Like, that's what's infuriating Americans right now. It's like, we want our systems to actually work. We want them to be measured. We want them to help our fellow human beings. And if that's the world we live in, then we'd have a much better shot at it.
Very, very quickly, because we're slightly over time. Regulation with AI in the U.S., you said that 10 proposals is as good as no proposals. It's following a similar track as crypto. So is it, again, where we're looking towards global jurisdictions that have moved faster than us, the AI Act in Europe that's looking like it will pass soon? Does that become the new global standard? Is the U.S. going to fall behind on regulation in this space?
We're in danger of falling behind in the space because our legislative body is not functioning at a high level. And so you might see some states actually put something into place, and then that'll put pressure on the feds. California has typically been ahead on these regulations. The EU has typically been ahead on these regulations. It's one reason why I do what I do is that our biggest problems require our public sector to have its act together. It does not right now. And so you think, okay, like, let me ignore it. But you can't ignore it and expect us to actually prosper in an age of AI, because things are going to head in a direction we don't like unless we actually have the right leadership.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and to our audience for joining us for this conversation. And to conference,
thank you guys. Great seeing y'all.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out to the 2023 North American Blockchain Summit. It was the best summit yet. We look forward to hosting you again next year. If you enjoyed the summit or like what you saw in this video, be sure to subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about membership in the TBC, go to texasblockchaincouncil.org to learn more.